Oh hey, I'm summoning up a demon with the power of rock the roll! Caution! The following video is an in-depth review of the movie I'm currently reviewing, which means that there will be massive spoilers in the review. If you haven't seen this movie yet, then please feel free to watch this movie first before watching this video. However, if you have already seen this movie, or you just want to know my thoughts on this movie, then keep watching. Rock and Rule was one of those animated films that I wasn't aware of its existence until YouTube with the Qualified channel had made a request for me to review this film. I had originally reviewed this movie way back in 2013, and it was during the time that I was doing my first ever Requested Videos week, where I had spent a week making videos that were requested by the viewers. Why I liked the idea of having a Requested Videos week at the time, I felt like I was rushing through my reviews just to get my videos out on time. And unfortunately, Rock and Rule was one of those reviews that I had rushed through just to get the video out on time. Because I had watched Rock and Rule only one time when I did that review, I felt that I didn't really go into depth with what the story or the characters were all about. So now it's time to start anew. Now that I watched this movie a second time, and I started noticing more things about this movie than I did before, I'm going to give this movie the Reviews 2.0 treatment. I'm going to try to go more into depth with the themes and the characters in this obscure animated film. So before I go into what I liked and hated about this film, I would like to give out a brief summary of this film. The movie takes place in a dystopian world that was formerly the United States, after World War III happened and caused most of the human population to die out. The only surviving races in this world were animals that were mutated to humanoid beings. Think of the characters from the animated TV series Arthur, except that they live in a darker and less family-friendly world. Mock, who was a former famous rock musician, wanted to summon a demon into the world so that he could give an unforgettable concert to his fans. In order to achieve this, Mock needs to find someone who has the perfect voice that can awaken the demon. It was then that Mock headed to Ohmtown, and there he finds a rock band that consisted of the members Omar, Dizzy, Stretch, and Angel. When Mock hears Angel's beautiful singing voice and realizes that her voice is the one that would summon the demon, he tries to coax her into joining him and leaving her bandmates. But Angel refuses to leave her bandmates, and Mock ends up kidnapping Angel in order to force her into singing with him. Now Omar, Dizzy, and Stretch have to save Angel from Mock before Mock summons the demon. If the idea about an evil rock performer trying to summon a demon to cause mayhem in the world, and the only way to summon said demon is to find the perfect singing voice sounds weird to you, then it is. But in an awesome, bizarre way. I never would have thought that I would be so invested in the idea about music and demons intermixing with each other to create a rock musical on an epic scale. But hey, I love sci-fi fantasy films, and this is one of the most intriguing films that I have ever seen. I was even more surprised that Nelvana, the Canadian animation company that was responsible for creating shows like Care Bears and Beetlejuice the animated series, had actually worked on this film. I used to watch a lot of Nelvana's animated shows when I was little, especially Care Bears and Babar, but I never expected them to work on an adult animated film like this. Now granted, I had seen a lot of adult animated films or edgier animated films that came out during the early 1980s, like Fire and Ice, The Last Unicorn, and The Secret of Nim. But I'd never seen an animated adult film that features heavy language and sexual imagery. Heck, even Fire and Ice was tame in comparison. This movie came out a few years after Heavy Metal came out, which was another adult animated film that was a rock musical. As of this video, I haven't seen Heavy Metal yet, so I don't know how much inspiration this movie took from Heavy Metal, or if it's anything like Heavy Metal. All I knew about this film was that it was supposed to be a spiritual successor of sorts to The Devil and Daniel Mouse, which was another adult animated film that Nelvana made before this movie. And it was also another movie that I haven't seen yet as of this video. Wow, I sure got a lot of animated films that I got to watch later on. It's interesting that during the late 1970s and the early 1980s, there was a huge focus on making animated films that dealt with rock musicals. Before then, the only type of animated musicals that were out at the time were Disney animated musicals. So imagine my surprise and delight when I found out that there were adult animated movies that were rock musicals. I really enjoyed most of the songs in this movie as they were catchy and really captured the essence of the early 1980s music culture. Probably my most favorite song in this film was Earth, Wind & Fire's song Dance, Dance, Dance. Earth, Wind & Fire has always been one of my all-time favorite 1970s bands, and yet because this film wasn't as well known as, say, Heavy Metal, the song Dance, Dance, Dance often goes by unnoticed. Unless you were a huge fan of Earth, Wind & Fire and you wanted to check out all their songs that they have done over the years. Another song that I really enjoyed in this film was Mock's song, My Name is Mock, which was sung by Lou Reed. The song really captures Mock's egotism and villainy, and I just love the animation during that sequence, as there are many colorful effects and Mock's movements were very realistically done. I was also intrigued with how the film takes place in a dystopian future. Here it appears that all the humans have been killed off, and the only beings that have survived are animal beings that have been mutated. In the American version of this film, it was stated that the events of this film take place after World War III. However, in the original Canadian version of this film, it was never really stated about when this film took place, except that it stated that it took place in an alternate future. For those of you who are wondering about what World War III is all about, this film was made in 1983, and it came out during the time when the Cold War was going on. During the Cold War, many people were worried about having a nuclear war, and World War III was often used as a term for nuclear war on a worldwide scale if it ever did happen. Anyway, the film itself never really alluded to World War III in its plot, as the plot mostly focused on the musical aspect of the characters and the world that they lived in. The only time that they mentioned World War III in the film was during Mock's song, but that song was mostly about Mock himself rather than about World War III. I like how dark and cynical this world is, as the film is almost always shown during the nighttime, and the citizens that live in this world either mean-spirited or cynical. Heck, even the protagonists are pretty cynical in this movie, which I'll get into later on. It's rare that I come across an animated movie that has very cynical characters, and yet I'd still like them for the most part. So now that I talked about the world and the music in this movie, I would like to talk about the characters themselves. First off, we have Omar, the main protagonist of the movie. Omar is not your average goody two-shoes good guy. He's actually arrogant and a bit aggressive towards his girlfriend Angel and his friends Dizzy and Stretch, at least at first. At the beginning of the film, Omar often has a hard time sharing the spotlight with his bandmates Angel, Dizzy, and Stretch, and he also had problems showing his true emotions towards Angel. This often led to some relationship issues between him and Angel, which Mock later on takes advantage of when he invites Angel to sing with him. His whole character arc in the film is to learn not to be so egotistical and to allow his bandmates to be in the spotlight, especially Angel. Also, Omar learns to show his true feelings for Angel as he spends most of the film trying to rescue Angel from Mock while realizing how much he really loves her. Angel was another interesting character in the film. She is shown as being truly ambitious about her dreams of being a popular singer, and she never let anyone get in her way of her dreams, especially Omar at the beginning. Another character trait that I like about Angel is that even though she spent most of the film being kidnapped by Mock, she is often proactive in her plans and escaping from Mock. I like how she tries to talk her way out of a complicated situation, as it shows just how resourceful she is and how determined she is to get back to her bandmates at all costs. I especially love the scene where Angel stood up to Mock and actually told him that she would never sing for him no matter how many times he tried to force her to sing. It shows how brave and bold Angel is and how she refuses to let anyone take control of her. Angel actually reminded me of Tigra from Fire and Ice, as both characters are strong female protagonists who try to get out of a complicated situation by themselves without relying on their love interest to save them. But now let's talk about my favorite character in the film, Mock himself. Mock was a very interesting villain in this movie, as he is shown as your average rock musician who wants to give his fans the greatest concert on earth by summoning a demon. Okay, so maybe he's not your average rock musician. I mean, what rock musician has the ability to summon a demon? Even though Mock was able to know how to summon a demon to Earth by looking through his computer system, I do wonder about how Mock was even aware of the demon's existence. Oh, and do you know why Mock wanted to summon a demon in the first place? Because a few of his fans didn't show up at his concert, and he got very upset about that. Man, what a prima donna. Anyway, Mock was such an interesting character to me because his personality really stands out from the other characters. He's not shown as being a slob or having a rebellious attitude per se, but he seems to have a regal air about him that makes him the film's most gentleman-like character. It seems like he's the literal king of the world as he looks down on anyone who's beneath him. He also doesn't care about who he hurts in order to get his way, as shown with his horrible treatment of Angel. I love the fact that Mock is shown as being very manipulative and cunning when he needs to be, which was very prevalent during the scene where he tries to convince Angel to join him and leave her bandmates. It shows that he is not a force to be reckoned with, even though he slowly starts to lose his mind as the film progresses. I don't have much to say about Omar and Angel's two best friends Dizzy and Stretch, since they are just there to be the comic reliefs of the movie. Probably the only important thing that they have done in the movie was trying to encourage Omar to go after Angel after Omar had given up on saving Angel. They also seem to be the only ones who noticed that Mock was up to no good and that it was a bad idea for Angel to join up with Mock. Now that I talked about the things that I liked about this movie, I would like to talk about some of the problems that I had with this film. I had mentioned in my original review that I had no idea about why Mok wanted to summon a demon in the first place, but now that I watched the movie twice, I now know the reason why he wanted to summon a demon in the first place. But I do have a major issue with this film, and it's the fact that most of the characters aside from Mok and to a lesser extent Omar were a bit flat to me. The film doesn't seem to give us any insight to the characters' minds, only the Cliff Notes versions. Like, we know that Mok was upset that a few of his fans didn't show up for his last concert, and he wanted to summon a demon to make his most recent concert the best yet. But how did Mok become the way he is? At what point in his life did he think that being the world's greatest rock musician was more important than the lives of many innocent people? Did his ego become so big that he was willing to murder numerous people to get what he wanted? TV tropes had mentioned that if Omar had continued to act egotistical and abandon his friends for a chance at fame, then he would have turned out to be like Mok. I think that this is a really good comparison between Mok and Omar, and I wish that the movie had actually explored this concept. Omar would have realized that in abandoning his friends, he would have turned out like Mok, and might possibly kill innocent people in order to achieve his goals and becoming famous. I also wish that the movie actually explored more about the world that the characters lived in. It was mentioned that the film takes place after World War III happened, but we barely see or hear the characters mention anything about World War III or about how all the humans had disappeared. I know that all of this is not that important to the story, but I would have loved to know about how the animals were mutated, why the humans were killed off during World War III. Rock and Roll was rated PG. The reason for this rating wasn't given, but I'm going to safely say that it was rated PG for some nudity, brief strong language, some scary images, and drug use. I personally think that if this movie was released nowadays, it probably would have been re-rated PG-13, because the language and nudity would have been too edgy for a PG rating. The movie rating system was a bit different back then, as even movies that had a PG ratings would have had some very edgy content like nudity and strong language that wouldn't fly in today's PG rated films. However, this movie came out before the PG-13 rating was even invented, so that's to be expected. I'm actually surprised that the film got a PG rating, and it wasn't because of the content. It was because this film came out during a time when animation wasn't being taken seriously, and most animated films were given G ratings, despite the edgy content that some of them had. This was one of the few animated films at the time that broke the mentality that all animation is just for kids, and proved that animation can have edgy content if it fits the plot of the movie. But unfortunately, I think that because this movie was too edgy for kids at the time, most of the audience didn't want to see this movie, and this movie ended up being forgotten. Unless you were a huge fan of Nelvana's works and you wanted to see all their works in the past. Originally, I had given Rock and Roll a score of an 8 out of 10, but after rewatching this movie again, I actually enjoyed this movie much more than I did the first time around. So I'm giving Rock and Roll a score of an 8.5 out of 10. This is probably one of the most creative adult animated films that I have ever seen, and I love the way that the music is interwoven into the narrative. I also enjoy a majority of the songs in this movie, especially Earth, Wind & Fire's Dance, Dance, Dance. It's a shame that this movie isn't as well known in the animation community as, say, heavy metal, because I feel that this film is truly an underrated classic that deserves to be seen by every animation fan. Even though I wish that the film had developed the characters and the setting a bit more, this is definitely a rock musical that viewers would never forget. Hope you enjoyed my review of Rock and Roll. Hey guys, like this video? Then please feel free to hit that like button. And also, hit that subscribe button for more content about video games, movies, and TV shows from this channel. And now, let's roll the credits, please.